This is the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. Hello and welcome to Chewing the Cud podcast. My name's Andrew Jones and with me today is...
Sarah Bolt.
How you doing, Sarah?
I'm great, thank you. And you, Andrew?
Yeah, not too bad, all excited.
Why are you excited, Andrew?
It's July and it's a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday, it's not a Thursday.
No, it's a Wednesday, that's right. We've moved now to a Wednesday and that's our regular day moving forward for year 4. And it's year 4.
Year 4. A whole new season.
A whole new season. Episode 50's creeping up.
That's really exciting. Who's the 50th?
I'm not telling. But we have a nice little journey in front of us. Starting with today's episode on genomics and the benefits that has been seen on farm. So from that, we will then progress on a few others that originally hadn't realised. There's a nice little journey there. So hopefully the next few episodes people will enjoy and it will show some progress along the way.
A bit of a theme as we go through the next few episodes.
Bit of a theme, definitely. So onwards and upwards, as they say. So on to today's episode. So I hope you enjoy and you'll hear from us again soon. This podcast has been brought to you today by Chewing the Cud Limited, who offer completely independent dairy and beef nutrition, cow signals advice and training, along with ROMS mobility scoring. For more details on these and other services available, please visit our website www.chewingthecud.com or email us directly on nutrition@chewingthecud.com. Chewing the Cud Limited now offers first aid training from a registered first aid at work trainer and experienced minor injuries practitioner. For more details, please visit our website www.chewingthecud.com or email us directly on training@chewingthecud.com. Hello, I'm Andrew Jones.
And I'm Sarah Bolt.
And welcome to the Chewing the Cud podcast, a podcast for the UK dairy industry.
Farmer, advisor, processor, and everyone else. We have topics and episodes that will interest you.
We discuss the practical and the technical aspects of different UK dairy industry topics.
We aim to make you think about what you're doing and ask yourself, can it be done differently?
Listen to us speak with specialists from inside and outside the industry about their area of expertise.
Subscribe and listen to episodes for free on your favourite podcast platform.
Or sign up to our website, www.chewingthecud.com, for podcast notifications so you never miss an episode.
And links to our socials, including Instagram, Chewing the Cud Podcast. All one word, and remember, no G.
Or email us direct on podcast@chewingthecud.com.
If you like what we do, please share and leave us a review to show your support. And that's it. Enjoy today's episode.
Hello and welcome back. And today we have 2 guests with us. This is the first for us. We have a married couple on the podcast. So welcome to Stuart and Helen Rogers. How are you both?
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, good, thanks. Yeah, it's good to be away from the house where we were battling trying to set a new printer up. So this is nice to see how we get on here.
Well, the joys of technology. Let's hope it does go well, shall we? But yes, so Helen and Stuart live relatively local to myself. Helen is a vet with the local Friars Moor, and Stuart is a dairy farmer that is known to many, certainly within the pedigree breed. And we're here to talk about genomics and how it's worked for them on farm. But first of all, Stuart, tell us a little about yourself. How did you get to where you are today?
Right, yeah. So I'll try and shrink it down a bit because Helen will always she'll be kicking me if it goes on too long. So
you have a history.
So we have always had a pedigree herd through the generations, my grandfather to my father, and then as a youngster I was just always on the farm, always with the cows. Back then we were going to the Royal Show and different shows, so that's kind of how the breed
You're under a different prefix then, weren't you?
Yeah, so we were Charwell, which is we were in Oxford then.
Yep.
We moved So attendant to the Duchy of Cornwall, we moved to Dorset. The cows moved in 2011. So the first calves born at Longmoor Farm became the new Longmoor prefix.
Yep.
So that's how the herd. We just wanted a clean break, so we sort of knew where the new cows.
Yep.
And just a fresh start on that. So we just, after we moved, it gave us a real purpose. We had a future ahead of us because it was a bit uncertain at the old farm. So we just wanted to push the herd on and continue in the direction we were already going. But then genomics, we'd started using genomics bulls before 2010, the first genomic bulls we'd used.
Yep.
And then we started testing in 2012.
All right, before we go too far down that hole, Helen, what's your background?
So I'm a vet, so I'm a farm animal vet. My parents were dairy farmers. They're now beef farmers with my sister. And I started working in Oxfordshire after I qualified. And Stuart and I were the vet farming cliche in terms of a couple. And then we moved here and I moved to Friarsmoor in 2011, which has been brilliant.
That's actually where we first met, was on your interview with Friarsmoor, wasn't it?
Oh, gosh, it was. Yes, you're right.
Doing a DA with Lucy.
You're right.
At the farm I was milking at the time.
It took me absolutely ages to place you after that, Andrew. So lots changed since then. I became a director at Friarsmoor, and I'm still a director for both businesses, the small animal and the farm business. But most of my work is based around cattle fertility, and so genomics is something I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
And not forgetting your role with the family business as well, I guess.
Yeah, true. Yeah. There's a lot, as your father-in-law would say, as my father-in-law would say, there's a lot of excellent pillow talk. So
can't believe that's come up.
He's so proud of himself.
Hi, Colin, if you're listening. Oh dear. So yes. So you've mentioned briefly, but you were a well-known herd. You were showing. You've moved down here. You said you started to use a little bit of genomic bulls. Was it 2010? I mean, genomics came in about 2007, 2008, wasn't it? Really. When I remember seeing the first bulls available, I think I used one or two myself when I was still farming. But what made you having, I suppose, a well-known herd, you're showing, probably classifying well. What made you decide to go the route? You'd obviously dabbled a bit with genomics and using some of the bulls, but what made you make the decision to go, we are going headfirst into genomics, that's going to be our breeding policy? And when did that happen, I suppose?
Well, I guess we didn't really go to... Initially, we were using bulls. We knew the sire and the cow family, so we were looking for a strong combination on both sides. And really, we got more into it as the calves were being born and entering the herd, and we were just happy with how they were turning out. So then it just built, really. We just kept building sire choices into the breeding program until we did a full switch, which I guess is probably pretty quick. By 2013, we were fully genomic. So you probably sires then.
By then, probably getting first lactation animals out of using some genomic bulls.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, the 2010 ones they were completing first lactations then. I think so.
Yeah. So fairly quickly, then you could argue in breeding terms, you'd sort of noticed that change and felt that was the way to go forward.
Yeah, I didn't really. There was nothing really. There was a lot of people sort of saying, how it's not. Some things won't work out and different things. So we were sort of cautious, but the further we got into it, the more distant that sort of seemed really. And I think it's maybe something to do with the quality of the herd, and the combinations.
Yes, the base.
But that, so then we started looking at the female side, which was interesting because the first cows that we tested were just through selection, which isn't the right way.
How you thought were the best cows.
Yeah, then we'd find out, they're actually not as, we can see where they're...
It made us really challenge who we recognise as good cow families, didn't it? Because the cows that you forget about in the herd are actually your really good earners and the ones that are just plodding away in the background.
Yeah, the ones you don't see, the ones that aren't lame, the ones that aren't got mastitis, and they just do the job without you even worrying about them.
Yeah, so they're not necessarily the ones that you would take to a show or you would parade in front of people, but actually they're the really good cows. And I think moving also made us really focus on like the commercial elements of farming. Like we had to make it work on a new farm. So whilst we were obviously an established herd in Oxfordshire, so genomics really helped us produce a really nice genetic animal who was also really commercially viable.
It's just made me think, taking a step back, I mean, like you were saying, Stuart, the negatives you were hearing early on. I mean, from people I talked to at the time, the UK was definitely behind other places in the world, I'd say, in taking up genomics. I mean, obviously, I was in Oz for 10 years and things were going there, but a couple of contacts I was talking to there, they would go, well, some guys already in 2010 had already gone, right, we're going full genomic. And we know that some bulls will win, some bulls will lose, but overall we will have an upward trajectory. But as I said, maybe it's because 500 cows, it doesn't matter if you use 10, 20 straws of a bull because it's not going to have as big an impact if it's a wrong bull. Whereas here, you make 10 straws in a UK size herd, it can be the wrong bull, it can make a detrimental effect moving forward. So I would argue, certainly here in the UK, and people I've spoken from the US, whatever, we've been a bit slower in taking up genomics maybe than some.
You're quite good at taking, strangely, because you're quite risk averse and other things. You're actually really good at taking risks and trying out new things on the farm, I always think.
And I think we're
quite an early adopter of quite a lot of stuff.
But we sort of identified, it'd always been the pedigree, the interest in how cows looked.
Yes.
And that's why when we did this genomic testing, we sort of found, it wasn't until we tested everything that we were finding cows that we didn't know.
At what point, because you said you'd selectively tested some, at what point did you then go, let's go and do everything?
Well, because we realised that
from those initial ones that were good.
We're still not using it to its full potential because we're making the selections. It's the choice we're making, an emotional attachment to a cow.
Yes.
Where it ends up, making you lose a bit of money, really, because there's a cow that she'll take more straws to get in calf, but you keep plodding on because
whoever they are.
Yeah. So, like Helen said, we were a bit more focused on the sort of finances of the operation, really. So, testing the whole herd gave us the option to find the cows that were going to really make us the money.
How did your father take this? Given that you were almost, how do I put this, potentially rubbishing 30, 40 years of his work to then go, well, actually, that cow isn't as good as what we thought we were or we thought she was. We want to go this way instead.
He's always been really open to change because he was one of the first people to jump into Holsteins.
Yep.
So he's had that about him anyway.
Yes.
And it wasn't, we still had the cows there. We still classify.
Yep.
And we were still taking pictures of cows. So we had amazing cows.
Yep.
Classifying wise. Plus really good genomic figures. So it was a full package.
Just another step on in a slightly different direction, but you're still going in the overall direction you intended to go.
Exactly. And then you just change your alignment to cows changes with the figure. So over time, you sort of change your perception of the cows that you want in the herd. So now it's a less individual basis. It's more of a herd package.
So actually using those figures rather than using what your eyes were telling you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we had, so we did some analysis quite early on after we started testing all the heifers and we compared like parent average against genomics.
Yep.
And just to check that they were, we weren't getting any massive disparities and it gave us the confidence that the data was accurate basically.
Yeah. So were there any big surprises at the time when you did do the whole herd? Was there a particular herd favorite or family that was like, they really aren't what we're, Helen's nodding yes.
Yes.
And others that weren't.
I was going to say no.
Well, they definitely were. And interestingly, as the herd has improved, so those families which we identified early on as potentially being less good, as the herd has improved, their progeny have really fallen back.
Have they?
And so the Else family would be an example, wouldn't it? Their health traits aren't great, are they? And we wouldn't, but they they were a family that you deliberately invested in because you really like them, their pedigree, didn't you? But actually, performance-wise, they haven't been as good at all, have they?
Yeah, I don't know. That was, I guess there are certain elements of each family, but there's families that will jump out and be a complete package, and that's what we're looking for, because you can have areas that some excel and some don't, but it's the entire looking at it as a whole, and
that one might be slightly better on production, whereas that one's slightly better on health traits or whatever.
Yeah, and the health traits are so important. You know, it's probably the single most important part of it, because the losses we have in the herd are down to health. So now where we are, we started testing everything in 2014. So we're 11 years. Every single cow in the herd's tested. We've got a as their tag and test basically as their so as they're born, we test them and send them off. So we just get a really big load of data about each animal. So if you analyze the herd now in a genetic review form, you can see so much, and it's backed up by genomics rather than PA, which we've had that split through from being all PA to partial genomics. Now it's full genomics and no PA. So
how have you found, we mentioned cow families, you've invested obviously in some, you've got a Cosmopolitan, is that right there?
Yeah.
And others. How have you found your own families that father, grandfather developed have compared to some of those internationally known families?
Can I answer that one? I think, and it's not just Longmoor, like on every single farm, your own cows that you breed will inevitably last longer. And the reason they're there...
to your system.
Yeah, they've been bred for your system, they've survived on your system.
Yeah.
And we've definitely found that, haven't we? I think the cows that we have bred at Longmoor in the early stages have been the best ones, and cows that we brought in haven't necessarily performed as we would have anticipated.
But genomically, are they performing? How are they performing? Hold on, let me get the terms right. Phenotype and genotype. How are they genomically performing but not phenotype performing?
Yes, because they're not they're not bred for your environment. Yeah. And that's where like epigenetics comes into it a bit more, doesn't it?
Yeah, we found this recently. Well, going back to some of the oldest families, the Sunset family, my grandfather bought the first one in the 1940s. So we're still, but their genomic scores are still really high. So we've got those cows still performing really well. So, and then recently we bought some embryos that were biopsy genetic. So we knew the genetic value, and then they have come in and not hit the mark at all. So we can breed what we can breed with what we know. It's far better than what we can bring in. So there's no point looking to bring anything else in, because we've got so much quality, quality within the herd. So it's for 7.5 years we've been sex semen and beef. So we're making huge progress with the sex semen, which when genomics first started, it was mostly conventional semen. So we still had that 50-50. So progress is a bit slower. So it's now for the sex semen straw price, you're making really good progress.
But it is interesting that you mentioned epigenetics, and fingers crossed we've got someone lined up to talk about that.
Oh, cool.
We're supposed to be here later today, but they're busy crunching numbers. So we will, fingers crossed, get that later this year. But it's interesting you say, that genetically some are measuring up, but phenotypically they are not. And it's always been the ones that, obviously I've brought cows in the past, and some of them don't do as well as what you expect them to do. They're doing well on their home farm, but they're just not. Everyone's environment's different. And you hear, how many times do you hear people, I brought this cow and it was doing 10,000 litres, but it's only doing 7 for me or whatever. There's usually a reason for that.
And an element of that disappointment is your psychology, isn't it? The fact that you can remember exactly how much you invested in the animal.
Yes. You always remember the ones you spent the money on, or whatever it happens to be. Don't, like they always say, you always remember the good ones that have gone.
Yes.
But that is interesting to hear that, definitely. But it is also, so the ones you already had on farm are doing just as well as anything that you've brought in.
Yeah, I think so. And one of the best families now would be the Bridget family that we
Yep.
bought in a calf in 1999. And
Yep. It's now had time to develop to your
Yes, exactly.
herd.
Yeah, we bred her to.
Yeah.
So
suit the
over
herd.
time, some
Yeah.
families will adapt and change
Yes,
and
yes.
fit your system, but there will be some that you'll struggle, continually struggle with. So.
Yeah. Definitely. So that's interesting. Oh, well, I'm looking forward to this epigenetics talk now. That'll be...
So
very-
epigenetics is so cool.
I think so,
It's
to be
the
honest
next
with you.
step, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it is. Yeah.
To be honest with you, it was a complete throwaway line in the Immunology podcast that came out recently. And off the back of that, someone contacted me on LinkedIn and said, I know someone that can come and talk about
Who's talking to you?
epigenetics. Guy called Ian... Can't remember his surname. But he'd got some startup company. We'll find out. We'll find out. So yeah, but he's all into his epigenetics and stuff. So anyway, sorry, we're getting distracted. But anyway, so you dumped in, well, you're now full at it. Did you say 7 years, was it? I think you said, was it the whole herd? No, when did you say you started doing the whole herd?
2014.
Sorry, yeah. And then you said full sex semen was
7
years.
7.5 years. now.
Yeah. So I suppose the question, how many bull calves do you get?
4 or 5 a year.
4 or 5 years.
So still get some, but...
Of course, everyone always does. I just thought it's one to throw in because you always get some, I got so many. Well, you're always going to get the odd bull calf with the
I
sex semen,
think,
aren't you?
but if you look at it, really, it's just so much better. The reliability is so good because, we're getting the similar fertility results.
Exactly the same
as well,
conception
so.
rate for sex semen compared to beef. So.
And where are you using that sex semen now? Is it you're picking your best cows? Is it just your heifers? Or how are you using your semen across the herd?
The majority of matings are from heifers and first lactation.
And first lactation,
We're still looking then how they performed in the first lactation and how their genomic figures stack up, really.
Yep.
So, but then that means the older proportion of the herd is running a bit like a flying herd now because it's just so much beef, across the... Once we've made that... We've got that genetic from that cow, then...
What would be the oldest cow you currently have that you are breeding replacements from?
Yeah, maybe a third calver.
Because, there's the old saying, there's no such thing as old genetics, just good and bad genetics.
I think it's one of the things that people really struggle with getting their head around is the fact that they would like to see a proven dam on the ground. They'd like to know what her milk yield is, what her cell count is going to be like before they even consider giving her sex semen. But that massively extends your generation interval and your rate of genetic gain.
Yes.
So you kind of have to trust that the 70%, 80% accuracy by then will be worth
and to be honest,
investing in.
Things have moved on, haven't they? Because let's be honest, we said genomics started, 2006, 2007 or whenever it was, and was it 2012 New Zealand pulled a whole team. But we're now another 12, 13 years since then. You guys have obviously been doing it full time for whatever, how many years? It's 10 years, or whatever, by what you're saying, that you started testing the whole herd. And you're seeing the result of that from what you're seeing. You've already briefly mentioned the fertility and I'm guessing all the other health traits as well.
Yeah. But it does take a bit of a leap of faith. You have to... And I think people feel disappointed that they're not using their amazing third, fourth calvers that are chucking out loads of milk and appear to them to be really commercially viable. But you do have to focus on those young genetics that are going to be superior.
I'll be honest, I think I would still struggle myself. I'd be going, well, what's wrong with her? She's proving what she's supposed to be doing. Why can't we keep breeding from her?
They still have their place. They're still doing an amazing job. And if they've then had one or two daughters, if that good cow then has had one or two daughters, then granddaughters are coming along. And
I suppose that's it. Sex semen, isn't it? I mean, back then, even then, sex semen was a little bit, you used it, but again, it's just improved, hasn't it? Because they always said,
much better at using it.
You're saying you're using it on your first lactation animals, where it always used to be don't use them on there because that's where you used to struggle because nutritionally or whatever reason, those were the animals that usually struggled more on conception with sex semen. And obviously you're using it, and it's all moved on, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. And you have to keep fine tuning things. Like you can't necessarily do what you've always done. So like we get we've invested in technology, so we know exactly the stage that the cows are in heat. So we know how to time our insemination to when they're in heat, which really helps with your sex semen conception rate.
Yep.
There's lots of fine tuning that you can do.
Yeah. And I suppose as it's not being taken into consideration when you're making the decisions, to the eye, Stuart, how have you found the herd has developed? Is it still pleasing to the eye? Are you classifying as well? Do you think, because there was certainly, when health traits first came out, or, became the big thing mid, 2000, early 2000s, whatever it was, a lot of those higher health trait bulls were, how do I put it, the plainer animals when it came to type. And I'm guessing, things have changed. But how have you found, like, classification or things like that have changed since you've gone down more this route rather than maybe the way you would have done it in the past?
I think we still classify. We still have different classifications that are really good.
Yep.
Last time we had a 95-point cow.
Yep.
And you'd be really disappointed to know that she's in calf to beef.
I was going to say, I bet she's not in calf, is she?
She's
black and white.
She's done her work genetically, but
she's building up that pedigree, isn't she, for the generations?
So classification still
is an important part for you.
Yeah, there's been odd bulls, but I think we had odd bulls when that's what our main focus was. So I guess we're still in a good place on that, really.
I mean, hopefully this is taking out some of that degree of risk, isn't it? Because you say it's now 70% rather than 35% under parent average.
We still breed some absolute dogs occasionally, but that's kind of part of the motivation, isn't it? To try
and genetics for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's an art as much as it is a science, isn't it? Breeding always has been, and you just don't know which genes you're going to see. But you're not disappointed that in that time it's gone in a way you didn't want to see.
I don't think it really has gone too far from where it was before. I haven't got the classification results to hand, but I think we're, it's still amazing the results we get.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be negative. I know there's people going to ask this kind of stuff, and
I think, but the interesting thing is
making that point.
Like probably, 15 years ago, you'd be able to remember all of the classification results. That would have been a real focus for us.
Yep.
Now the classification is much less important in terms of ranking our cows.
Yeah.
So, and you could probably remember what the genomics, the PLI, is of various heifers off the top of your head, but you no longer remember the classification results just because it's less important for us, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess looking back, we would have had a cow that would have been a high scoring,
like 95 point. I'll take your 95 point animal now.
Yeah, and we'd have bred her and made replacements from that cow throughout her whole milking career, but she could have been a certain percentile down on production or health traits to other cows. So actually, we could have been breeding in a cow, the wrong sort of cow, and we would have let things slip. The bad fertility or low production, or
she's 95 points. We'll just give her that little bit extra go or whatever it happens to be.
I think the really cool thing about genomics is you've got everything on one piece of paper.
Yeah.
Almost everything. So rather than just like looking at the cow and then you kind of forget about her, you might be looking at her conformation, but you forget about her fertility or mastitis. You actually have all of that on paper, so it allows you to make a really informed decision.
So I guess that means, moving on, how are you seeing them in terms of genotype and phenotype, in terms of the results you're getting on farm? Are they they must be, because you're going down there, but are they doing what you're expecting them to do?
So if you rank our herd according to their genomic potential, so you rank them according to that potential, then you can see, if you then look at their fertility index, that, for example, days to calving, days to conception comes down significantly as the genetics improve. So the more superior genetically the cows are, the lower their days to conception.
So those cows that are high fertility genomically are getting back in calf quicker, and you are seeing that repeatedly on farm.
Yeah, and the same,
trusting the results.
Exactly, and the same for something like if you look at milk per cow per day, and you look at their genomic milk yield predictions, then there's a really positive correlation with the more superior genetics.
Yeah.
And how long did it take to really get that confidence that actually what you're seeing in the genetics is what you're getting?
I don't think it took that long, did it? I think as soon as they were in milk and we were getting a backing calf, it was pretty easy to see that those improvements were being made.
Yeah, it was really quick. The first ones we tested were coming back with some with high cell counts, and then early recordings, high cell counts. So we sort of started building a picture, and the confidence started growing quicker. And that's why we adopted. Just jumped in and adopted it. And
they're the things that are actually really easy to, like, just kind of off the top of your head to correlate. So, like, cows, heifers are calving with persistent high cell counts, or have repeated cases of mastitis. If you go back and look at their genomics, they very often do correlate, and that's the kind of thing that helps you build up your trust in it.
Because I should say, I'll drop it in here. As it stands at the moment, you're now currently the number 3 PLI herd in the UK. But I mean, this talk came off the back of you came to give a talk to the discussion club that I'm secretary for. And I remember you making a comment at the time, that was never your aim, was it? It was never to be that high-ranking herd. It was just to do what you wanted to do on farm.
It still is. I stumbled upon that list, so it's not something, it's just a herd approach, and we can't really, it's our context and how our herd looks. We don't know how other herds look. It's not really, we just focus on your thing, on how our herd is, because everyone else, it's different circumstances and different things happening on each farm. So yeah, just trying to do what we do, and then
it's still a nice feather in the cap, though, isn't it?
I was going to say
it is pretty cool when you see them when you see the Longmoor prefix up the rankings.
Yeah, I think so. But it's
you can be excited about it, Stuart.
It's just that's something that's in the background, and it's the challenge.
It's just fortuitous. Is that the right word? I'm not sure it is, but it just happens to be a byproduct of what you've done, and it's a great thing. But that has never been your aim to achieve.
I just think looking at that as a side, it's just trying to continue and build on what we have to make the herd continue to move. And it's a bit of sort of thing. It's a bit of a snakes and ladders sort of setup when you get a proof run and you're building nicely, and then the figures, or suddenly someone pulls the rug out, and then you sort of build again. So you're kind of where you are, but ultimately the herd is incredibly well positioned in many different areas now. So there's lots of different things, lots of different moving parts on the genetic front that keep the herd doing what we need it to do. So there's a lot of balance between highly productive cows but healthy cows. So looking at the breakdown of the proofs to get everything we need in there, looking at the AHDB figures and where the increases we've made over the last few years are really interesting, but that isn't a static figure. What's being bred and what's coming through could change that either way. So we need to always just be keeping an eye on what we're doing to keep things moving the right way, I think.
So who actually makes bull choice and makes mating decisions?
Stuart does it all himself.
You do it all yourself?
Yeah, so we haven't ever used a program, so it's just, we've got with technology now, all the phone, on the phone you've got the genetic figures right there and the bull figures, so we try and reduce the number of bulls we have in the pot, which seems to happen on availabiliability anyway.
So what do you normally have, half dozen?
2 or 3.
2 or 3.
Usually one red and white and 2 a couple of
which would be less than we would recommend for herds that are struggling with low, so like if you're just starting out and using sex semen, you'd say you should spread your risk and have 5 or 6, but I think in established herds who are really good at using sex semen, then that's fine. Just as a little caveat.
Right.
Do as I say, not as I do.
But so you're doing it yourself. So again, congratulations to you that it's not you're not using but
I think that's like, it's because you're interested though, and I think you're interested and you're really good at knowing like the limitations of the environment and what we need to breed in to maximize the expression of that potential. There are quite a lot of people who just don't have time to sit and think. They just haven't got the headspace for loads of reasons to think about genetics, but it does really pay off because it's a massive investment. And I think every farmer's input into your genetic choice is so valuable. And if they could give a little bit more time and headspace, it would really, really help their herd improve.
I probably used to be more like Stuart when I was still milking, or when I was still in Australia. I was probably more like Stuart. I just lived in breed genetics. That was my first thing. And, I'd have conversations with my vet who'd be going, oh, you should be using something in the top 10. No. And I was talking to her because obviously I was selling stock bulls as well as AI bulls. I talked to the neighbour, what bull are you using at the moment? Oh, I'm using this bull and because he's good fat. And being North Queensland, you wanted good feet. Well, why are you using him? He's shallow heel depth. Is he? Didn't know that because all they were looking at is they didn't even have a feet and legs over there. You just had what was it? It was a type and I can't remember. I can't remember whatever it was, composite. But they weren't looking at the breakdown, and that's what you're obviously doing is looking at the breakdown to see what's there. But I mean, I can say, have you got any other criteria other than the genomics? Do you sort of go cow family still a little bit, or do you sires come into it, or is it just purely on those genomic figures as to how you make that choice?
That's the starting point, purely that figure. That's the primary draw.
Yep.
And then after that is a breakdown and looking. So still look at pay attention to teat length and rump.
Yeah.
The rump.
For argument's sake, if something might have a good genomic figure, but if they're really high in the rump or whatever, that's an extreme example I'm just using. You'd probably go no and knock them out for that reason.
Yeah, or if there was something that could actually make the adjustment we needed to make.
Yes.
But it's very much an individual basis, and I think the main thing we've done is taken the genomic scores and actually used them, and I think there's a lot that would get the genomics but not use the figures.
Yep. So you've got like a minimum, haven't you? So you have a threshold, didn't you, for in terms of something like PLI that you would only, if they're below that threshold, you definitely would breed them to beef. And then if they're above that threshold, you would look at the proof and look at the genomic proof and work out whether they're worth breeding.
Yeah, and it could be could be two half sisters.
Yep.
And one, or twins. There could be one that's a lower.
Yep.
And you just take one, the one that sits in, and it just means that one will come through and be a good milking cow in the herd and do her job in the herd, but the genetics will come from the higher one. So, but your two sisters, one, it could just be that mating didn't work. And within a mating, like with twins, there's a lot of variation in the figures anyway. You could get 100, 150 points between progeny, so between sisters. So there's a lot of.
You're really good at being strict as well, because
that takes some effort. That does.
Yeah,
definitely.
like 2709 the other day. You actually admitted you had a favourite, and you kind of battled with yourself.
It wasn't you, Helen.
No, definitely not. And you'd battled with yourself, hadn't you, a bit, because you knew you had to breed her to beef, but you did it, and.
Yeah, once you've done it a few times, it gets easier. Then you just sort of look to the future. Yeah, you just sort of push past that and look to the future. Sure. But then the classification and the productive life they have in the herd is still incredibly satisfying. Yeah. To have healthy cows. Yeah, I think now it's just a change, and it's just we've adapted and adjusted as things have moved. And I think if you don't, you're left with a herd that. Potentially is going to start losing your position in financial position and money that is difficult to.
Okay. But it sounds like, going back to my comment on bull selection, whereas like when genomics first came into me, genomics was the last thing I looked at because I was looking at pedigree, I was looking at cow family and all of this stuff, and then if I had two that were similar, what was the better one on the genomics? You're going genomics first and then look at the breakdowns from what that's telling you and where you go. And as you say, that's times have moved on.
Yeah. I remember having conversations with, similar conversations with you when, with genomics in its early stages. And we were sort of talking that had that exact conversation. And, when we first met then. So it's just gone. Yeah. It's just moved so far forwards. Yeah. It's a struggle to remember where we were because it's so normal now. It's just
exactly when it's normal to you, it's harder to. When you're used to doing it normally and somebody suddenly starts doing what someone isn't doing, you're like, well, why aren't you? Because it's just normal and we're seeing the benefits of doing it. Why aren't you doing it?
And there are loads of other wins as well. So, like if you're using genetically superior sires, you're gonna, and even if you're not focusing on things like Enviro cow or healthy cow, you're inevitably going to breed choose sires with really high genetic potential for those. So you get all those hidden benefits without knowing that you're actually focusing on.
Yeah. So I guess we've sort of talked about how you got to here. So Helen, more, I'm guessing it's probably more yourself who's looked at the data from conversations I've had with Stuart or presentations Stuart's made, and he's gone, well, Helen's done this, and I don't really understand half of this. It's her thing. Talk us through some of the results that you've seen when you've gone through all the data.
So I guess we touched on it before. There's definitely a really positive correlation between milk yield, milk per cow per day, and the genetic potential of the cows within the herd. Constituents show the same positive correlation.
So it's the obvious bits that are paying the money, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And cell count, mastitis, all of those things. Fertility, you've always had a really strong focus on fertility, and I think it's really nice to see that really coming forward. So our preg rate would sit comfortably anywhere between 34 and 38%, depending on where we're PDing and where we are in the year. And that's a really high figure. I'm really proud of that fertility, because you don't see those figures on many other farms.
Who's doing the inseminations?
Stuart.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah.
And then Victor and
Victor
I,
but the majority.
So doing a good job, definitely.
So there's and the cell count is always sitting around 68, 70. So
which is amazing in itself as well.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. And we have got a really good team. We focus a lot on the environment and protocols and picking up sick cows. We've invested in technology to make sure that we're really quick at picking those up. But
can I ask what?
So we use Cow Manager tags.
I was wondering if it was Cow Manager,
which are really simple for everyone to use. And the technology is excellent. Whatever you use just gives you so much more real-time data that you can look at wherever you are in the world.
But I'd say it's just remembering it's a tool. And it's still got to be, you still got to know how to read that data and act on that data. I was talking to someone the other day, and he said, they tell me all this stuff, but it doesn't matter. It might pick it up quicker, but if you don't then pick up that lame cow or pick up that mastitis and do something about it, then what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's just learning to. You're right. It's about learning to read it and staying and not desensitizing. To it, staying really conscientious all of the time. So, so our antibiotic use has massively plummeted. So it's really low.
Yeah, so I know it is. So go on, tell us what it is, because it's an outstanding figure.
So it sits, it's about 5.6 mg per PCU. So
that is awesome.
It is really low.
Yeah.
So
and I think if we go back to the one we did with Catherine, what's the UK average? About 19?
19 thereabouts.
So I mean, you're almost a quarter of the national average.
Yeah, and in this area, our herds are amazing. As a veterinary practice, our Friars Moor herd sits at about 10 mg per PCU, a bit lower now. Which is amazing. We've worked really hard over a number of years on improving our responsible use of antibiotics. But it's particularly low for us in what is a really high yielding Holstein herd. So.
And you think a lot of that's down to the genomics?
I think so, because it's just without us really consciously pushing health traits, we have improved our how genetically healthy the herd is. So.
So from your point of view, it ticks all the boxes.
It does.
And I'm guessing you're pushing this onto your clients a little bit as well.
I don't know. I mean, I think every farm, you can't have a blanket treatment for all your farms, because every farm is different and has different circumstances and different pressures. But
you've got a good case study at home to go, well, it does work.
Yeah, and it's becoming increasingly more available. So we've got a crossbred genomic tool, which was released in February, and that means that it's much more available to a lot of our herds. And
there's a lot of crossbreds here locally.
There are loads of crossbreds, and they haven't been able to do anything with genomics up until this point. So it'd be really interesting to see what the uptake is of that.
So what sort of advice would you give anybody that's listening now and thinking, I like the sound of that, but I haven't tried it? What's the best route to go down as to giving a go? What would you suggest?
I would suggest that you don't, if you're thinking about dabbling and testing, 20% of your cows, test randomly, because you'll be surprised at the results you get, and take the jump, plummet in quite quickly and start testing all of your calves. So spend the money on building up that knowledge in your young stock. And there'll be a lag period to see how they perform, but it'll be worth it.
Who does your testing?
Cogent.
Yeah. because I'm just bearing this in mind. I had a client who's now retired from dairying, and he did test all his heifers. He had like 50 heifers, and he only wanted 30, for argument's sake. And someone came in and tested them all, gave him the figures, and then basically walked away. And he's like, means nothing to me. So it's also having the support, isn't it, from whoever you're getting from, to make sure you can understand those figures, whether it's your vet or your AI rep, whoever it is, that you don't just take the figures. Well, I guess it's like we talked about technology. There's no point having it if you can't use it. So it's being able to understand it and make sure you've got somebody that can help work you through,
talk you through what that data is actually
what that data actually means,
and to make sure that you get some like independent advice, whether that be someone in the pub, like, or you talking to your neighbour in Australia, just having another pair of eye, casting another look over that data will pick up different stuff. So spending the time to look at it with other people is really important.
It is. I mean, I know, most people are busy, but there's no point having that data if you. I mean, I remember when we put in the rotary in North Queensland, the guys from Westphalia said, unless you've got time to look at that computer and look at the data, there's no point. I mean, you look at robots, the extreme now. I mean, the amount of data that comes out of those robots is just phenomenal. You've got to be able to. You've got to have the skills.
You've got to have the skills. And I think that's where farming's changed so much. Isn't it, over the last sort of 10, 15 years, that the amount of data that each farm is producing these days, it's working your way as to which are the important bits of data that I can actually use and make a decision on.
And you've got to be interested in data. Like, I think the most successful farmers are the people that tailor their system to their personality. Yep. So Stuart's really interested in data and efficiency, and that's why you're really driven by investing in technology.
I just didn't know where you were going to go.
But we both are, aren't we? We really like looking at figures, and you're interested in making everything more efficient. So it works really well to invest in technology, but that isn't that wouldn't necessarily match everyone's character, and there's no point in doing it if you're not going to use it and not going to.
Or surround yourself with the people that are interested in, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you haven't got those skills yourself or those passions for yourself, it's surround yourself with those people.
But seriously, but you're right there, because I mean, we've said it in other podcasts before. It's not just you; it's the team around you, whether that's nutritionists or geneticists or vets or agronomists, whoever it happens to be. It's having that team around you that you have confidence in to give you the right advice, to do the right thing at the right time, and go on that journey with you wherever that journey happens to be.
Particularly as the pressures on agriculture increase and ramp up, and you need to be able to pick other people's brains.
And I want to pick up on something that I know Stuart mentioned just the other day, sort of the context of why you do stuff, and actually sharing that with the team around you, that they all understand what you want to achieve with your farm is so hugely important, isn't it?
I was just going to say that as well. The team, having the cows work the way they do means the team understand that the cows, the health then reflects on their daily, the daily jobs they're doing, because there's less cow treatments, when we're with access to Cow Manager and early interventions, which are now fluid therapy and anti-inflammatory. So far less of the things that used to be involved with treatments, it's sort of a different thing. And so for them, they can sort of see and engage with how the herd is, and the farm as a whole is moving. So I think it's really important to.
But you're right, actually. It's those unhealthy cows that take up the time, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pulling those cows out to treat them, or the downer cow, or whatever, the non-routine stuff because of health. That is the frustrating stuff, because it takes time or effort or whatever it happens to be. So if you've not got that, it's got to make happier staff as well, I would have thought, because you're not doing that kind of not mundane, but the stuff that nobody likes to, It's
really demoralising, isn't it? It's like when you are feeding calves and you have a load of sick calves, they take ages, and it's really demoralising. But we are really lucky with our team. We've got some really good stock people, and they're really in tune with the cows, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think it's the culture, isn't it? That's the way we run the business, and it's very inclusive with the team. Yep. So we're all aligned and making things work,
and they understand
benefits
why.
And then we're all benefiting from it. So the better your business is for that, the more you can relay that back to them. So I think it's a really important area to be focusing on. And I think people probably need to spend more time looking at the cows they want to bring into the herd, because they're there for so long, aren't they? If they're problematic, that.
Well, if they're that problematic, they won't be there. But ultimately, you say there's
a
cost to that. Yeah,
huge cost to that.
Yeah.
So you want to make those with limited places, we can't expand the herd. So each cow place we have has to be the best it can be.
I think it gives you genomics gives you the confidence to not breed from animals as well. So the easiest way to improve your herd average is to get rid of your low performers.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you do that by you can do that really confidently with genomics, because you have actually really accurate data in front of you. So you don't have to breed, you don't have to continue to serve or run with the bull, the heifer who hasn't got in calf. And then she ends up being 3.5 years old when she calves in, because you know that you've got loads of other genetically superior animals coming along behind her. So I think it makes you much clearer in your decision making.
And actually, we all know that would have been the right decision at the time, but we don't want to make it for whatever reason.
Yeah, exactly.
Has it made you less sentimental then, Stuart, or by the sounds of it, not?
No, it's a good question, because sometimes I think it has, but I don't think it has. Individuals, but the herd is still the cows, and we still get up every morning. Everything we do is for the cows. So I don't think, just on an individual basis, maybe it's potentially it's changed, but no, everything we do is.
Was that we only do what we do because we love what we do?
Yeah.
To be honest, getting up and milking cows is not something for everybody.
No. I think, and it also is really encouraging, I think, because you know that you've got something to look forward to in the future. Yeah. Like if you've got a heifer that's just been born, you've got her genomic proof back, she's got loads of potential. You can focus less on the fact that you've lost potentially a really nice cow and think about, well, actually, there's loads to look forward to going forward. And I think that's something that's quite difficult in farming sometimes.
Well, I guess I always used to say, if I'm going to milk cows, I'd rather milk good cows.
Yeah.
Hence going invested like I did in cows, because I thought, well, cows with tits out all here, there and everywhere, and why do I want to get up and milk them? I'd rather have that lovely udder and whatever it happens to be, and it makes it more pleasurable to want to be there, doesn't it? It gives you that desire. And as you say, when you know you've got that, I'll mention that shottle. Even from a very young age, I remember my mother saying something and I just turned around and said, oh, she's going to be my global superstar. Now that was said very tongue-in-cheek at the time, because she was probably only a month old, but she turned out. But when you knew you had something exciting like that coming, it just makes it all that more exciting, doesn't it? And something to look forward to.
Yeah, and I think now we just, instead of having individuals, we've got whole groups, whole load of them, and they're coming through so quickly because we're just the effort we put into breeding them, managing the early stages to get them into production earlier. So
you mentioned groups. Do you find you're having less variation now genomically than what you would have when you started?
Yeah, I think
between your top and your bottom are closer than what they would have been in the past.
I don't know if that's possible, because you're always going to get a normal distribution, aren't you?
But it could be statistically
possible.
You're still going to get that distribution.
You carry on. I'm glad you took that.
You're still going to get your normal distribution, but it might be a tighter distribution, if that makes sense. Your standard deviation is going to be smaller.
Yes. I do. Yeah, you're right. Your standard deviation would be smaller.
Thank God I did A-levels.
Yeah,
I was going to say, this is turning into a statistics
pull that one out of the bag. But and that then again gives you the confidence to get rid of that left tail. You don't need those cows in your herd.
Yes.
You breed them to beef straight away. The other thing I think is really good at, one of the things I always think you must do in your herd is you need to be future-proofed.
Yep.
So we might have to sell up next year. We might have to change our milk contracts. We might have to do all sorts of things. But if we can create this herd that has the potential to move anywhere else in the country or into a different milk contract or anything like that, because we've created cows who are performing on all levels, whether it be constituents, yield, fertility,
it's adaptable.
This is our business, isn't it? We have to be. It must be commercially viable and it must be future proofed. And you quite often see farmers who suddenly have to change their milk processor, and their herd isn't actually that easy to transfer.
And it's building that resilience into
It is,
the business.
yeah.
Well, and you've already said it earlier, actually, when you said you've lowered the generational gap, because you are turning things around so quickly now that you're turning it around. Let's say you make a breeding decision today, 2-3 years, well, you'll know genomically probably within a year, but in terms of that being a milking animal, it's only 2-3 years that you know she's doing what she's supposed to do. Whereas, I mean, I remember my first bull contract going, well, it's going to be a year to get her in calf. Then the bull's got to hit the ground, so that's going to be a year. Then he's got to get anything in calf, so it's another year, it's 3 years. Then those animals have got to be 2 years, so that's where we now 5 years.
You always say 8 years, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Was the figure, wasn't it?
And then a year for them. Yeah, all right. It's Stuart said.
And a vast proportion of them aren't. Yeah, but and a vast proportion of them aren't even going to make that, are they?
Oh, yeah, but you look back and how, it was a really...
It was. It was 6-7 years before I knew if that mating I'd made for that bull contract was any good, whereas now it's...
Yeah, there's something like...
Well, you said you biopsied some embryos.
Yeah, well, and from Canada, so we bought them knowing the genetically what they look like. But it was in a lifetime, you were sort of 6 or 7 generations excellent. That's what you could do in a lifetime's work. But breeding heifers at 12 months, getting them at, at 21 and a half months, we're just turning over, getting them the productive and bringing, it's just a sensible way to, as well as being good for carbon footprint.
I was just about to say that, calving at that age and all of that time that you haven't got them not being productive must have a huge impact.
As I say, it sort of fits in what you were talking about being robust. You are more able to move and change direction quicker, and quickly and quicker than we would have done historically.
Yeah, for sure.
And one of the things has the other benefits is we've bred really heavily for constituents, haven't we? Even though it doesn't necessarily benefit us directly every day, but the indirect benefit has been that we've dropped things like the fats out of the diet, haven't we?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
Yep.
11,500 litres at 4.5 fat. So it's
that is a
exactly
great achievement, isn't it?
Plus
That's a direct effect of genomics.
Plus twice a day milking and grazing, so 6 months of grazing a year. So it's
and you say it can be done. Because I remember you had a client once, and I said to them, they always had not quite as high yield yourself, but really high fats. And I said to them one time, and this is before genomics even came out, I said, "Did you used to breed for fat?" He said, "Yeah, why?" I said, "Because I've got no one else I know can do what you're doing without any fats." And I remember he turned to his son and whacked him on the stomach and said, "Told you." And that was all because that when they went deregulation, they had a cheese contract, so they bred for it, and now they're not on that contract anymore, but it's knocked on through. So it's they got there without realising it was you've concentrated on that. And as you say, you can do it if you've got the genetics there to do it.
Yeah, and that's a massive cost saving.
Yeah.
Every year.
Yeah, and it's better for the, if you look at milk proteins and different things, it's all linked in. So I think we've just got to get better at piecing it all together as a whole, looking at the whole picture of a cow rather than breaking them down into looking at different areas. So, it's if you get everything that health-wise right, the rest falls into place. So it's key, a key part of it, really.
Well, probably surprised, but I'm looking at the time going, it's probably time we need to start wrapping this up. So I suppose any last words of wisdom from, Stuart
Helen
first.
Nobody has them.
I've been coaching myself throughout this to stop interrupting, so I think I've done quite well.
Well, yeah, I was going to make a comment, but I won't.
See,
you're not brave, are you, Andrew?
Andrew's learning.
Well, I was thinking of your father-in-law, and I was your father-in-law. Okay, so what excellent pillow talks are going to be tonight talking about this? You interrupted me. No, you shouldn't have said that. No, you shouldn't have.
Yeah,
we haven't caused any marriage discord from coming on here.
No, the printer did that before. It's been great to talk to you. I think we could carry on talking for a lot longer.
We could.
But just people should give it a try. And like Helen says, the new crossbred, just find out what you've got and see, oh, actually, that's something that can interest me and something I might actually or the next generation might be interested. It might be a way of increasing engagement with either a team or family. So,
but I mean, the objection I'm saying, if you go on farm, some people's going to be, oh well, I don't know what the cost is at the moment, but the cost for doing that per cow is X. I'm not spending that amount of money, but I'm guessing you're saying it is worth it.
I mean, there's so little money in a lifetime of a cow, isn't it? If you can get a productive cow into milk early.
Head around that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about spreading that cost over the 4 or 5 lactations that she's going to be producing milk in your herd.
What's it costing you to genomically test an animal currently?
About 22 pounds, something like that.
Which isn't really a lot, but I'm just saying some people might go, well, if I'm doing 100 cows today, that's £2,200. They might say, oh, but you're saying that investment is worth the return.
Definitely. And the other thing is, if you're starting testing your heifers, you would just start trickling that cost through, so you don't have to do it as a massive outlay of money straight away.
Yep.
Yeah. So the older cows, you just leave and accept they are what they are, but these heifers coming through.
So that would be your tip: is start with your heifers and
start with what's going to be the future, and then what we sort of found is, because the sex semen and beef part, there's 2 parts of it. The sex semen and beef gives us more beef calves, so we've got more money,
more income in that way.
Coming in there, so we've got that money to spend on
higher
sex semen,
costs,
and we're not using extreme, sort of 30-35 pounds of straw bulls, and we can get that genetic, and then with the genomics, make a cow that's going to save you so much on whichever part you've improved. Then the money, it's just a no-brainer, really. It's easily covered, and more. So,
Helen, any more thoughts or last thoughts from yourself?
Oh, thanks. Last hurrah. No, I think just build up a picture in the herd, get some advice, get someone else to help you look at the data, because it would be a bit mind-boggling, first of all, and make sure that if you are unsure, as you build up data, like we can stick it through programs to make sure that you are seeing the genetic progress resulting in those phenotypic gains. So, definitely give it a go.
Give it a go. Sarah?
I think it's just there's so many tools out there that actually looking at genetics and genomics shouldn't phase anybody. It's probably something that has phased me in the past, but actually get the confidence. There's the tools out there, and there's people out there that know. Surround yourself with those people and give it a try.
So I guess that was my thought as you were just saying that is, 25, it was been 25 years, say, not quite that genomics have been around. It's moved on so much. The confidence is there now to do this. There were hiccups early on. There's always going to be, but things have moved on and make use of. We should be making use, like all of these things. The technology, it's another piece of technology that we should be making use of. Yeah. On that, I'd like to thank both Helen and Stuart for their time today. It's been fantastic, and thank you very much for coming on. But otherwise, it's a goodbye from me.
It's a goodbye from me and a pleasure to see you both.
Thanks very much for having us both.
Thank you very much. Thank you for listening to the Tune the Cud podcast for the UK dairy industry, brought to you from the southwest of England and listened to around the world. Now for the really boring bit, I'm afraid, the legal disclaimer. The information provided during this podcast has been prepared for general information purposes only and does not constitute advice. The information must not be relied upon for any purpose, and no representation or warranty is given to its accuracy, completeness, or otherwise. Any reference to other organisations, businesses, or products during this podcast are not endorsements or recommendations of Tune the Cud Limited. The views of Andrew Jones are personal and may not be the views of Tune the Cud Limited, and the views of Sarah Bolt are personal and may not be the views of Kingshay Farming and Conservation Limited and any affiliated companies. For more information on the podcast and details of services offered by Tune the Cud Limited, visit www.tunethecud.com. Thank you and goodbye.